The phone conversation between fantasy veterans Bob Harris and Matt Waldman is a quick and dirty rundown of players, units, or teams from Sunday's games. Feel it or fuck it is our instant verdict on the fantasy value of a player situation, not the ability, effort, or character of the player. This is just how two old-timers in this industry talk when they got a lot to cover in a little time.
Good morning, Matt Waldman. Hope all is well with you. Hope all is well with everyone out. You know, we're going to speak about the NFL and fantasy football in irreverential ways right now, but that doesn't mean we're not mindful of the day and the price paid for the freedom we have. So I hope everyone out there is celebrating in their own way, but please take a moment to think about the sacrifices made on your behalf over the course of time. And with that out of the way, we will continue being irreverential. Right, Matt?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I mean, I'm just curious, moving on into this. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins apparently was in the news on Friday. So, where do you think we ought to go with this guy?
Well, let's start out, the reporting has been that, the two teams most interested or that were making an effort to get a trade done were the Chiefs and Buffalo Bills. So let's start there. Both of them, by the way, scared off by the contract. And we'll get into the Arizona ramifications of this because they are, interesting that they did not use the post-June 1 designation on him. It says some things about where they're going. But let's talk about DeAndre Hopkins as a Kansas City Chief. You feeling that?
No, I think that's a fuck it because I just don't think the Chiefs are going to be able to free up enough money to get him. And then on top of that, they're really high on Kadarius Toney. Now, in 6 months, we may look back on that and laugh ruefully about the idea that Kadarius Toney was going to be a thing, knowing that, as talented as he is, there's been some issues there with immaturity, with being able to stay healthy, that kind of thing. This feels like Kadarius Toney could be like Lucy with the football for Charlie Brown if we're not careful. But at the same time, everyone chases the Kansas City Chiefs offense because they look at the passing. They look at the pie and they say, this is a really big pie. The problem is Andy Reid cuts it into basically 3 or 4 slices, giant slices for Travis Kelce, giant slice for Patrick Mahomes, giant slice for the wide receiver one, basically. And so I don't think Patrick, they've chased Mecole Hardman, we've chased DeMarcus Robinson, we've chased Sammy Watkins, we've chased Skylar Moore. I think that at this point we should probably just hold off on the chase there and say this is just big 3 to 4 big slices of pie and not try to subdivide it any other way.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. It's just in general. I mean, so let's say on the off chance that DeAndre Hopkins does land there, would this be a concern for you for Travis Kelce to some degree?
No, it'd be a big concern for Kadarius Toney. I think Kelce would be fine because you can line up Kelce outside. You can do things with Hopkins outside. But Hopkins will probably take on that Juju Smith-Schuster role, and then you would still use Marquez Valdes-Scantling to stretch the field, and then you're wondering about what they're going to do with Toney.
Okay, unrelated note in Kansas City, but we'll get back to Hopkins. But Clyde Edwards-Helaire getting a little positive buzz. Are you feeling this at all? Is there any room for a rebound, some kind of rejuvenation or a rebirth for him in Kansas City?
If he was just beaten up and beaten down, but like it was just something where maybe he needed a little longer time to recover, maybe that's a possibility. But I honestly look at him and I think he's at his best in a role that Kansas City is just not going to use him in. And so he'd be better off in a New England offense as really the James White type of back. He'd be an awesome version of a James White back, where you can use him out of the backfield, or even what the Lions or the Eagles will now do with DeAndre Swift. I think he can do some things like that as a receiver, but as an every down back, I'm just not feeling that.
I'm not feeling that either. DeAndre Hopkins as a Buffalo Bill, are you feeling that?
I'm feeling that pretty good. I think that's one where the Bills will probably find a make a way to sign him and work out their contracts. Now you've got some younger guys, but Gabriel Davis, he's going to be gone next year. I don't think they're going to hang with him. Khalil Shakir, they've got another 2 or 3 years with him that they can probably see what they've got and let him sit a little bit or use him as a small end contributor. Justin Shorter's not ready for that type of primetime look. So having Hopkins and Diggs and then using Kincaid in there with Dawson Knox, you've got a lot of things you can do to make this offense multiple and hard to predict. And then you add James Cook to the mix as well. So there's a lot of guys who can play multiple positions on the field of the players I mentioned, and Hopkins is certainly one of them. So I'm feeling that idea, but I'm not sure. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up somewhere else.
Right, and we'll talk about that. Just let's look at DeAndre Hopkins himself. I want to see if you're feeling what our friend Doug Farrar wrote at USA Today, looking at what Hopkins has left in the tank. As a slot yak monster with a killer sense of zone coverage, quite a lot. As a true ex-ISO guy, maybe not so much. Feeling that?
Yeah, I can see that. I think that, you watched him last year and he was a monster from the slot. And really, you can line him up anywhere you want in compressed areas of the field. So if it's going to be inside the 20, inside the 25, if you want to put him as an X and win one-on-one in that short area of the field where it's going to be more of a contested catch, it'll be just fine. If you want to run certain types of contested, fade routes with Hopkins on the outside, I think that'll be okay too. Or certain type of routes where you can drag him across the field on over routes. He'd still be able to earn some of that off of play action where you can scheme him open a bit. But yeah, one-on-one where you want him to run the timing routes of the deep out, the deep comeback, slants maybe, depending on where you are on the field, that might be a little bit more of an issue. But I think that overall, you got to understand that DeAndre Hopkins has old man game. He always had old man game. He's very wily in terms of being able to basically foul you and get away with it. And he knows how to do that better than anybody on the offensive side of the football. And I think that's going to last for him for a couple of years. But slot, easy pick for him in the slot.
So where is the ideal landing spot, and why isn't it the New York Football Giants?
Oh, wow. Daniel Jones? No, I don't know. I mean, I like Daniel Jones enough, but that would be a good spot for him in New York. And I think that the only issue is that they have a lot of guys who play the slot already.
They do.
So they really need somebody who can be a straight up number one for them. And Hopkins maybe is a better, number two who sometimes poses as a number one right now. So for a team like the Cleveland Browns, now we're talking. Because now you have a quarterback he's super familiar with and has produced at a high rate. You already have your X in Amari Cooper, who can be your top route runner. Donovan Peoples-Jones is leaving next year. They're not going to renew his contract, and he's okay. But Hopkins would be an upgrade there, or you can move him in the slot and just say, well, David Bell, that was a nice little short experiment. Maybe there was more to you there, but if we can get Hopkins in there right now, we'll cut you loose, and we'll have basically Hopkins, Amari Cooper, Don Peoples-Jones, and Cedric Tillman, along with Elijah Moore also. So Elijah Moore is the other guy that you look at that because he's getting a lot of love too. So to me, it would be really the Cooper, Elijah Moore, DeAndre Hopkins would be the trio there.
Moore can play outside as well as inside too. So, and by the way, you've just convinced me. Fuck the Giants, feeling the Browns, and also would love that just so I could finally get rid of those David Bell shares that will probably exist on my dynasty rosters.
You're welcome.
without some intervention like that. Sorry. So let's move on to what this means for Arizona's offense. What does this tell us when they could have waited a week, right, and released him and spread that $22 million over 2 years, $11 million a year. They're taking that hit all this year. They're keeping him as a pre-June 1 cut. What does it say about the Cardinals' offense? Are we feeling the tank?
Yes, totally feeling the tank. I think that this is Kyler Murray's going to be out for half the year. I mean, you look at that, I think he'll be out for at least half the year.
Stop right there then. Let's do this then. Feeling Kyler Murray or Caleb Williams as the starting quarterback of the Arizona Cardinals in 2024?
That's a great question. I think they'll be trying to trade Kyler Murray. I don't know how many takers there will be and who those takers might be. So, yeah, Caleb, I'm kind of 50-50 on that one. I would say I could see. I'll say fuck it that they're going to keep Kyler Murray just because the Cardinals are going to feel like they're too invested after they've already spent a lot of money.
Right, they got Josh Rosen and then Kyler Murray both.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to do that again. Maybe they do it. Maybe they do, but I don't think that's going to happen. So, wow, I don't know, man. That's a tough one for me. What do you think?
I think they're moving on. I don't know if it'll be Caleb Williams. I think they're just, this is a total rebuild. This is the sign of the big tank. Letting the way they're handling this move. Also, that doesn't mean there won't be some opportunities for fantasy managers to leverage that early this year. I think James Conner is the way to do that. Feel it or fuck it on your end.
Yeah, right now, I would definitely want to trade James Conner if I could. But at the same time, you could see this situation working out where the Cardinals are basically in Lions mode from 2 years ago, and Conner gets a lot of receptions and winds up being a reasonably good fantasy value because he's basically in the DeAndre Swift role, but a better runner. So I would say I'm feeling that. The Cardinals, to me, I'm just honestly, I'm kind of like, fuck it, stay away from most of your Cardinals unless they're the slot receiver, unless they're receivers, and I think that the receivers I deal with as long as the value's there.
Right. So that brings me up to a free square play. Obviously, you're not going to have to pay for this guy. Michael Wilson, just want to get a rookie in here. Is he in a position to have a legitimate role this year?
Oh, I think he is, because I think he's the one most likely to have a shot to replace DeAndre Hopkins in terms of in the lineup. Now, in terms of the volume and production, it's going to be a little bit of a ways off. But Wilson is that inside-outside type of receiver. He can beat you on slants a lot like Michael Thomas, but you can also work him in the middle of the field and get a lot of two-way goes. But on the outside, he's very good as also at beating guys. So to me, I've said he's a spitting image of Michael Thomas, even down to the injury. The only difference is that dropping passes has been an issue. Can he be maybe the third most productive wide receiver in Arizona? Yeah, I think he could be the third. Maybe if he has if he really cleans up his hands, maybe he could be the second most productive. And remember, Marquise Brown can he stay healthy? Is he going to want to stay healthy when they're tanking? Is he going to want to be elsewhere? There's going to be opportunities for guys. Greg Dortch is going to play hard because he's gone from nothing to something and wants to continue to do that. Rondale Moore, question mark there a little bit from that game, what he can offer. So I would say Wilson will certainly be in a position as no worse than the fourth option in this wide receiver core.
Yeah, just for those looking for more information on this, check out the RSP, the post-draft edition of the Rookie Scouting Portfolio, where I'm looking right now, and I'm looking at the tier. Love the tier cheat sheet, Matt Waldman. Very well done. So everyone go make that purchase and check that out at mattwaldman.com. All right, so let's move on. There's another big story this week, or an emerging story at least, that kind of I think we plumbed the depths of poor DeAndre Hopkins. Let's now do the same with Jimmy G. Damn you, Jimmy G. So turns out there was a foot surgery in March. And if you recall, when he signed his contract, or he was signed with the Raiders, they had a big press conference call. They were going to announce his arrival, and then it was put off for some period of time. They said no big deal, just working through some minor issues. Well, the minor issue was they inserted a big-ass clause at the end of that contract that basically says they can kiss his ass goodbye without any ado or owing him any money if that foot is not fine. Also, right now that foot is not fine. He's not ready to take part in OTAs, and I guess they're hopeful he's ready for training camp. Feeling Jimmy Garoppolo as it sits now as the Raiders' Week 1 starter.
Yes, but only because I can totally see how that the Raiders will fuck this up, and Jimmy Garoppolo will be gone by like week 4, or they'll be leaning on him to be ready for week 1. He's not, and then they have to cut him. And they have a clause where, like you said, they can kiss him goodbye if he fails the physical again, because he didn't pass the first physical apparently. So, yeah, he's this team to me was a bunch of Patriots rejects that Josh McDaniels was bringing in, and either he's leading with his ego or he just wants to destroy every AFC football team that's not the Patriots by either, saying he'll coach them and then reversing course, or by, just being, the pleasant personality that he is with young players, or, and jettisoning them, or players in their prime and jettisoning them. So, yeah, I'll say I'm still going to project Garoppolo as a week 1 starter, all humor aside. But obviously, he's got to be in a tier for you where you're putting him below guys like Mac Jones.
Right. 100% agree with that. That's what I'm feeling here. Handsome though he is, Jimmy Garoppolo has moved out of QB2 territory for me, which is where he was, right? Even if it was at the tail end, I'd probably now rather take a chance on the upside of Jordan Love, or, just the uncertainty there. So let's make live in a pretend world, because it's
he could do work in West Hollywood, though.
He's a very good looking man.
Could...
So we're at the tail. Look, we're just getting into OKs here, so we're going to play a little pretend. If Jimmy G is gone, Brian Hoyer, currently number 2 on the depth chart, as the starter if Garoppolo isn't.
For at least half the season, and I think Aiden O'Connell would probably be the guy that they would want to take a look at, and it would just be a lost season, and Devontae Adams would probably be traded at this point too, and then you'd have a very miserable Hunter Renfrow, and though he'd probably get a lot of looks, he just might get creamed, with the type of throws he's going to receive.
By the way, Devontae Adams' criticism of the front office now becomes a little bit into a little clearer light here, and their willingness to cut him some slack, because clearly they fucked up. Or no, I don't know if they fucked up. Clearly this is not an ideal circumstance. So let's take it out. Tom Brady, now they've confirmed is buying a small percentage of this team. He would be the owner. It would be difficult for him to be permitted. It would take a unanimous vote of the league, were he an owner, a part owner, to come back and play. And I'm not sure all those AFC West teams would give him that vote. But again, we're living in a make-believe world at the end of May. Tom Brady as a potential starter for the Raiders this season.
I would say no, but I'd say that the AFC North would vote for it just so that they could beat his ass and say that they've been able to take it out on an owner, because the AFC North would be that kind of division that would do that. But other than that, I think the rest of them would probably wimp out and just say, no, we don't want him to be anything but an owner at this stage.
This has got to be like a two-edged sword, because obviously if you are the NFL and you're looking to maximize your merchandising and value and audience and eyeballs and things like that, Tom Brady would, as the Raiders quarterback, would certainly get you there, but I think it's unrealistic. But something that might be, I don't know if it's realistic, but something worthy of merits my thoughts here. Trey Lance as a potential Raider.
I'm feeling the idea of getting him out of San Francisco, but I'm not sure going across the bay to Josh McDaniels is the greatest thing. I mean, Tom Brady, in terms of like guys who would work well with Josh McDaniel, I'm totally feeling Tom Brady, because he's the one that will just yell at him and make him kind of tell him to sit down, shut up, and let him run what's going on. And McDaniel is used to that with Brady. But I think McDaniel otherwise is a bit of a bully in terms of how he handles things. And unless he's bullied back by somebody who has a track record, he just runs roughshod over people. And I don't think Trey Lance is in a position to be able to just tell him, fuck you, and sit down and let me do my job. The only young player that I think would probably have done that, who, I haven't been paid by him lately, so I've got to say Chad Kelly, but, he's been kicked out of the league, at least for at least a certain amount of time. They did want him back. Yeah, Rich Gannon would have done it. We need somebody who basically will stand up to Josh McDaniel and just say, listen, just shut up, sit down, and let me do my job. Call the right play. What the fuck was that play that you called out? Things that Tom Brady says to him at the sideline, and then they're okay with working it out, because he'll install a good structure. Josh McDaniels will, but you need somebody who's going to execute it and tell him to keep his hands off and not micromanage everything. And I think Brady's that guy. Lance isn't remotely that guy. Maybe in 10 years, Lance would be that guy. But we need somebody who's going to be a good, provide a good ground for him to work with, and Oakland ain't it.
Okay, we've discussed some things in some of these recent Field or Fucking podcasts, so we're going to go to clean up on aisle running back and circle around on a couple of these that seem to be shifting in a different direction. Dalvin Cook, the latest reporting is Jeremy Fowler suggesting that the Vikings are trying to find a way to, and Cook trying to find a way to keep him there in Minnesota. Dalvin Cook remaining a Viking. Feel it or fuck it?
Absolutely feeling it, because they probably had rookie mini camps, took a look at Dwayne McBride and realized that he wasn't the guy that some people are saying that he is. And they need a running back one that they didn't get cheaply. And they're leading with offense this year. I mean, their defense is going to probably be just as bad as it was last year. So they need every bit of personnel on offense to have a shot to make the playoffs. And it's a strong offense.
Fair enough. And I tend to agree with that. Joe Mixon seems like, there doesn't seem to be any movement. Now, maybe there's some legal issues that are going to rise. Nobody seems to be too worried about them or too worried about a suspension like we are with Alvin Kamara. So Joe Mixon, if he remains a Bengal, feeling him as a seriously underpriced asset?
Yeah, I would be feeling him there because, Chase Brown could do work for you if you needed him to, but he's not Joe Mixon. He's a rung below Mixon as a talent, at least a rung below. And they don't have anybody else after that who's even remotely in the same class as those two, if you ask me. I don't even think if Travion Williams is starting for you, you don't have a running game in the NFL at this point. And so looking at it from this perspective, I think that the Bengals would have cut Joe Mixon if it was either super serious at this stage, at the early stage of it was, or if they thought he was lying to them. Because as we learned, last week with our replacement Daniel Harms last week, Kareem Hunt, basically lied to Andy Reid, and that's why he got cut. So right. I think that the Bengals will stand behind Mixon as long as he's honest with them about what happened, and they know that they'll just deal with the suspension and go on.
Yeah, Katie Blackburn, I think it's worth noting the language has changed considerably. Katie Blackburn, speaking at I want to say a March owners meeting, kind of said it was a wide open, range of possible outcomes. And subsequent, Zach Taylor, more recently, it seems like more certain that he's going to be there. So I'll just note that Dalvin Cook going as running back 15 right now in current best ball 10 ADP, and Joe Mixon 16 or 17 right there. So I think there's something to be had there. By the way, Tony Pollard is going as running back 14 right now. Are you feeling Tony Pollard is potentially a top 10 running back this year?
I am. And I think it's mainly because as long as I see him being the type of guy that the Cowboys may wear out in the next year or two, in terms of trying to give him as much of the ball and many targets as possible. I don't see Deuce Vaughn taking over Pollard's role, and Pollard taking over Elliott. I think it's going to be more of Pollard's going to get probably most of the touches, and Vaughn is, I would be surprised if Vaughn turns into the Pollard of this offense from, 2-3 years ago. I'll put it that way.
Right, I'm totally feeling them running the wheels off. I think, though, the NFL's view of running backs is convincing me that all these players that are currently on their franchise tag or near the end of their contract, they're just going to get run into the dirt, and it'll be on to the next thing. And so we'll see what that next thing is. By the way, related Cowboys question for you. Are you feeling the Cowboys offense with Mike McCarthy as a play caller?
If Dak Prescott is at the stage of his career that says, fuck you, Mike Martz, this is what we're doing. And
you called him Mike Martz.
I did, didn't I? I'm sorry. I was thinking of Jay Cutler saying, fuck you, Mike Martz on Monday Night Football. So if he's in the Jay Cutler stage but not quite smoking on the sideline yet, then I think that this could work if Dak Prescott has a strong enough personality to handle Mike McCarthy's play calling and make some changes, and there's some flexibility to it. And I think I think it'll be okay. So I'm feeling it because I think the personnel's good enough and there's enough veterans on that team that they'll be able to push back.
Okay, the other side of that coin, Kellen Moore goes to Los Angeles to run the Chargers offense. Do you feel like he'll maximize the value of Justin Herbert in this offense?
I think there's potential there for that, yeah. And again, this is another good personnel, rich team. And I think Herbert wasn't so awful last year. So, I mean, I think,
Right.
say game on point, what they're probably saying is he going to be up there with Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen? And I think the answer is no. I think he was a better quarterback than maybe folks like myself thought he would be. But I don't think he's as good of a quarterback as people are thinking he should be right now.
Right. I want to say that impressive rookie year, as impressive that it was, I think they led the league in pass attempts. So their volume matters, people. I don't know.
Didn't they have 700 passes? No, that was Tampa Bay last year that had 700 pass attempts.
Yeah. So it was a high number though. So so I'm kind of with you here. I think the view is that we need to get Justin Herbert back on track. You should remember he was playing with a serious rib injury for a good portion of the year, and without both his top wide receivers on the field at the same time. When all those things seem to go away, Justin Herbert was just fine. I think he'll be just fine this year, and I think he'll get a little value. That's what I'm feeling. Not fucking Justin Herbert, feeling him, friends. That's for sure. Patriots offense rebounding under Bill O'Brien.
Yep, I'm feeling that. I'm totally feeling that idea. Exactly. It is a low bar. If I say rebounding to Tom Brady heights, no, fuck that. But if I say moving back in the direction that it looked like Mac Jones was moving in as a rookie, at least for half the year, I'm feeling that idea for sure. O'Brien is certainly a good play caller. You could argue that I'm sure there's the argument made that they probably tanked a bit with their choice of play callers to get Bill O'Brien again. So maybe there's a little bit of that there. But the big thing is the receiving core. I think Juju Smith-Schuster is a good replacement for Jacoby Myers. I still don't think they figured out their outside receivers, and that means that they have two slot receivers in Kayshon Boutte and Juju Smith-Schuster that I kind of like. Tyquan Thornton, can he make the next step? Maybe. If he does, that'll be good because Devontae Parker is who he is. Right. We know who he is, which is one step forward, two steps back in terms of fantasy production. So
I desperately need Tyquan Thornton not to be another one of those receivers on my roster that I can't cut even though he's horrible.
Yeah, maybe. How about this way? I'm barely feeling it. That's the best way to put it. How about you?
Barely feeling it as well.
Okay.
I'm totally fucking with the Miami Dolphins backfield for fantasy purposes, except they're so damn cheap. I mean, you're looking at the running back 40 beyond range for all three of these guys, and by all three of them, I mean Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson Jr., and Devin Achane. So, how are you? What's your view on the Miami backfield for fantasy purposes?
When I say I'm holding up three, pick the one in the middle. That's Jeff Wilson, I think, for me. But maybe he's the one that the people are leading with. But I like Jeff Wilson in terms of his skill set. I think he's the most reliable. He's probably the most durable. He's the one best fit to run between the tackles and really understands the system at a high level. Mostert and Achane are kind of interchangeable if Achane can maintain the weight that you want him to have, which is 195. That's what he's weighing in at right now. But is he going to maintain that weight? Because I remember Ronnie Hillman weighing in the 190s, and then he was in the 170s by middle of the first season, and they felt like they couldn't roll with him that way. So yeah, Wilson's the guy, and then if both Achane and Mostert can't hold up, remember Christopher Brooks. That's all I'm going to say is as a guy you can get off the waiver wire. I'm feeling the potential for him making this club and hanging on there.
I've just made note of this. Thank you, Matt Waldman, for that. Okay, so looking at the incoming rookie quarterbacks, we've kind of discussed them over the course of time. I mean, it's becoming increasingly apparent that Anthony Richardson is being set up to be the opening day starter. Bryce Young seems to be on a similar trajectory. I think C.J. Stroud will be, but, sounds like he's not guaranteed. Where are you at on C.J. Stroud as a opening day starter?
I'm feeling whatever they decide they want to do with him on this end. I think that, they've got enough talent in Davis Mills and Case Keenum to basically roll and give C.J. Stroud a little bit more time. They have a lot of young receivers on that core, so that's kind of a tough thing to deal with too. Another new offense, right? I think so. Yeah. I think it's probably best to have some experience under center before Stroud gets in there and give him a little bit more time. So I'm feeling that idea.
All right, fair enough. I feel like why would you draft these guys and not start them? That's where I'm at on pretty much all the rookies. I mean, we've seen the path to Super Bowl success even, and that ball got rolling basically in Seattle a number of years ago when Russell Wilson was allowed to compete with Matt Flynn, the high-priced free agent, beat him out, and subsequently they were able to build around Russell Wilson and build a successful program. So we'll close out today with some Russell Wilson talk. And I'll frame it like this, but basically the question is, so leaner and meaner is what he's claiming he is now. He's leaner and meaner. Is that the new let's ride, Russell Wilson? Is this going to be a derisive thing we use, or will Russell Wilson rebound and make us all forget all the nonsense?
I think they'll always be grumbling with him because, they don't think he's cool. So, but I'll put it to you this way. It's very possible that part of the Russell Wilson problem, in addition to his coaching staff last year and young players, it was that maybe he wasn't in great shape. And maybe he did get a little sloppier with his play, or he was a little banged up. I think that the margin for error is so narrow for pro players, especially at the quarterback position, that I'm willing to give Russell Wilson a mulligan and say it was a down year. They've been trying for years. I kept hearing people make excuses for him in the same way that like he was Baker Mayfield, or where they would be like, well, he's not great in the pocket. And they compare him where he needs guardrails. He didn't need guardrails like Baker Mayfield had guardrails, and or Jimmy Garoppolo needed certain types of guardrails. So I think really it comes down to that. I think Russell Wilson will be sharper. He'll have a better coordinator, coach overall. And I think this is going to work out for them. It may not be, he may not return to top 5 production, but I think he'll be a top 12 quarterback this year.
Yeah, I'll change. You've been mentioning, in terms of Josh McDaniel needing a quarterback who will come in and tell him what to do. I think Russell Wilson needs a coach who will come in and tell him what to do. Sean Payton will tell him what to do.
Yes.
And that we'll have those contentious conversations from the other side in this case. So,
and he had success. He had success with
Right.
Breeze. And
Right.
I think Breeze and Wilson have a lot of similarities to their games, even though people will want to tell you otherwise. But, I think Wilson is much closer to Breeze than he is Baker Mayfield. So,
all right. And we're much closer to being done than we were when we started. So let's call it a day. Again, hope everyone's having a great holiday. Take a minute to think about the reason you're out there having a good time, and price was paid for that. And don't overlook it. We don't. And had a great time. Love you, Matt. We'll talk next week.
Love you.